How did you first get the gig with Phil Collins?
Well, it was interesting. I was doing an album with Lee Ritenour back, I think, around 79 or 80, it must have been. And Phil was the drummer on it. I forget if we did a couple of tracks together on it. And he knew me from James. He was a James Taylor fan, and I knew of him from Genesis and Brand X, because I was a big Brand X fan.
Okay.
And we talked at the session, and I said, man, maybe we'll get to play together and do something together. Then when he got his solo deal and he was doing his first album and his first tour, he called me to do it, but I was out with James Taylor and I couldn't do it. So I said, man, I can't do it this time, but maybe down the pike we can do it. And he called me again in '84 for the No Jacket Required album, and I went to England, and then we hit the road after that and did that, and then the But Serious album. And then we had sort of a parting of the ways through the 90s, and then he called me in 2000 and asked if I could come back. And he was bringing Chester back at that point. And then we did the first final farewell tour after that. But it was after that he just decided he wanted to be a stay-at-home dad and announced his retirement, and his life kind of went into an upheaval. And I kind of never thought, I knew we'd be friends, but I didn't think we'd be playing music again. And then all of a sudden, like 2 years ago, they called and said, Phil's thinking about coming and working again, and said, would you be available? I said, no shit, I'd be available. And everybody got together, man, and it felt amazing.
Who else is in that band now with you, Lee?
The current lineup is Daryl Sturmer, of course, on guitar, who's one of the finest guitar players there is. Brad Cole on keyboards. Nick Collins on drums. Luis Conti on percussion. We have 4 background singers. Arnold McCullers, who I've been out with James Taylor with, and Lyle Lovett and everybody, but he's been with James since like 76 or 5, I think. So it's Arnold McCullers, Amy Keys, Bridget Bryant came back, and Lamont Van Hook. And then we have just the Vine Street horn section with George Shelby on sax and Harry Kim and Dan Fernero and Luis Bonilla on trombone. And they're killer. I mean, just absolutely killer. Yeah. And band's just smoking, and we're doing a few Genesis songs in the show, so the crowd's loving that.
That's awesome. Yeah.
So it's great, but Phil basically comes out and just sits on a stool for the whole thing because he's got a condition where his one leg is bad, so it's just easier for him just to sit on the stool, and he addresses it the minute he walks on stage. And we realized at that point all the crowd wants to do is see Phil and hear those songs.
Right. Exactly.
He doesn't have to be running around. He doesn't have to be playing drums. Right. Ideally, it would be great for him because if you met Phil walking down the street and had no idea who he was, and you just said, hi, what do you do? He would say, I'm a drummer. I mean, first and foremost, that's in his heart and soul. Sure. He's that before anything else. Yep. But that's the one thing that's kind of been taken away from him, which is really kind of sad. Yeah. Be like Steve Lukather, developing tendonitis and not be able to play guitar anymore.
Right.
It's just certain cats.
Sure. Well, it's really great that he is feeling well enough to be back on stage and performing. Doesn't matter, just sit and enjoy, right? So
when you're sitting up there on stage, you look up and you've got upwards of 50 to 60,000 people a night. You've done something right.